One Piece chapter 1154 explores more of Loki's backstory and how his suffering and mistreatment shaped him into a savage force to be reckoned with. It also unmasks one of the most powerful pirates in the history of the series in what is one of the chapters of the year. We start off with a flashback to 63 years ago, the same year Loki was born, and we're told that Charlotte Linlin as a kid killed Chief Jarul's partner in crime, Jorul, and they say despite being a mere human, Big Mom left the giant village in ruins. Though we all know Big Mom is definitely not just a simple human. There's something different in her blood. There has to be. I mean, just look at her. The narrator saying mere human is not fooling me. But anyway, in the same year of Loki's birth, the country of Elbaf faced many hardships, ranging from wildfires, windstorms, and winter storms. And these storms devastated the crops and made fishing nearly impossible, which led to a countrywide famine. And all of these calamities were put on the shoulders of a baby Loki, the supposed accursed child. Then we see Estrid yelling out loud that this is all his doing, and she says that this land was cursed because he wasn't killed upon birth. And the other guard is like, surely this is a coincidence. And that's true. Estrid probably made up the curse to avoid the fact that she bore such a hideous and monstrous baby in her eyes. She wants nothing to do with him, but Loki manages to break into her bedroom, but Estrid, while being sick and bedridden, is still terrified and asks that he never be near her again. She wants Loki's eyes to be gouged out because she thinks the curse will grow even more if it's left unchecked. Loki being treated like this by his mother as a baby will leave a big hole in his heart, which is shown later in the chapter with how he acts towards other mothers and other giants on Elbaf. In the next page, we see the worst of the famine, where the giants are plotting to steal food from other humans, saying how that's always been the Elbaf way, so why don't we do it again? All the while knowing how Harald has changed the identity of Elbaf and how that's something you wouldn't want to happen. They still look to loot food even amongst themselves, and these kinds of internal struggles are not a new occurrence, but it just takes place at the most inopportune time. A year fraught with famine and storms becomes even more bloody and severe, and this makes Loki look even worse because giants are now starting to believe that he might really be cursed. We see this bitter old giant raging with fury, trying to blame the country's fate to Loki, and saying how Hajurin, his older brother, needs to serve as a sacrifice and take responsibility for everything that's going on. Ida tries to protect him, saying how Hajurin is just an innocent giant who will one day become the longest living man, which seems to be Ida's dream to see her son become the oldest in the world. The old giant then attacks Ida, but is stopped by King Harald as he smacks him down to the ground. The king has returned to Elbaf after hearing of Loki's birth and the famine ravaging his country. So far, he's been busy building relations with the other countries, and because of Harald's friendly diplomacy, he managed to get all the other nations to bring their food rations to Elbaf, which is more than enough to fill the bellies of all the giants in Elbaf. Harald has built a rapport with the other countries by exchanging information and hands, and the other countries have allied with Elbaf in return in providing food to make sure that their relationship can continue to prosper. Though just the scale of the food that would take to feed a country of hungry giants is crazy, so I wonder how many nations have come together with their food supply, because it would take quite a lot to satiate their hunger. These nations have gone out on a limb to help Elbaf, which just shows how much of a turnaround Harald has made with Elbaf's reputation. Harald also says if there is ever a time where they need our help, then it'll be our job to return the favor. Perhaps this is foreshadowing that in the near future, the allied nations will require Elbaf's assistance. Maybe in the final war, we will see. In the next page, we see that Estrid has passed, and what's insane is that she continued to publicly condemn her son and curse her son, blaming him for everything that plagued Elbaf right up until Harald returned. She hated her son from his birth to her death, which imparted to Loki a sense of bitterness and hatred. Even Estrid's death was seen as a part of Loki's curse. Harald gets to see his son for the first time, and Loki's eyes are taped shut, likely at the request of Estrid. Loki has been so deeply affected by his mother's hatred that at only a few months old he has given up on love, which is something I didn't think was possible. But I guess Loki has only known mothers to be hateful and vengeful, so he would naturally have a hard time trusting anyone, no matter their intentions. Then we see that the famine has ended thanks to Harald, and he's also building new routes on the branches to connect different villages of Elbaf and to improve their trade and communication, further showcasing how good of an Elbaf king he is, and honestly one of the better kings that we've seen in the entire series. However, he isn't perfect. He prioritized venturing to other countries while other things such as Loki's deteriorating state became less of an importance. He or some high-ranking figure in Elbaf appointed Estrid's brother to be Loki's personal steward, even though Estrid felt nothing but hatred for him. And her message of Loki definitely reached her family members, so I don't know why anyone would let Estrid's brother be in charge of him. Harold made a simple but thoughtless error in not introducing Ida into Loki's life and letting her be a parental figure to him. Considering how she changed Harold's discriminatory perspective in the last chapter, I don't see why not she wouldn't be able to change Loki, though I guess Harold was so busy that he probably thought Loki would be fine if he was left with his family. Next, we see Ida in her new tavern she's opened, and Hajuden is there with her. Interesting fact, this is the same tavern we later see Shanks and Cullen in, which is a nice tie-in because Ida claims that the tavern is welcome to anybody, fishermen, castaways, and even pirates. Some years pass, and Harold and Jarul discuss the recent revelry that took place, and Harold talks about how his friend was one of the kings invited to the revelry, and that his friend smuggled him into Marijois as one of his guards, which is hard to even think about, considering how big and tall he is. A specimen like him, I don't know how he managed to sneak into the revelry with no one recognizing him, but hey, he mentions a murder that took place, which he says is the reason that his cover didn't get blown up. Later, we find out that the death is of none other than an admiral. More on that later. Jarul goes on to describe a tale of giant shipwrights that use warhammers as weapons called the Gully Law. They were this group that traveled the seas and sent letters back to Elbaf, and the final of which mentioned all of them getting captured. Someone or something captured a group of 100 warriors, with some of them being ancient giants. Remember how we learned in Punkazard that the world government has been trying to turn humans into giants for many years, and not just any regular giant. 188 years ago, the world government tried to recreate the ancient giants on Punkazard, and though they were successful in somewhat matching their strength and size, these subjects were ultimately labeled as failures. These subjects then became a part of Kaido's crew as the numbers. Now I say all of that to say this. What if these shipwrights were subjugated to experimentation by the world government? It's very much possible. Jarul says that they sunk deep into the ocean at one point, but no one really knows. Then he says that the reason Harold's policies aren't accepted is because the giants are regarded as the enemies of the world. But Harold is like, yeah, and that's why it's so important that I've done what I've done. Harold is working to end generations of prejudice and discrimination towards the giants. Some more time passes and Loki has gotten older, and he has had enough of his spiteful uncle, so he kills him. We see Loki grow up, and now we're at 48 years ago from the present, and Harold reveals his dream to the country of Elbaf, of joining hands with many other countries around the planet, and for the giant race to be welcomed everywhere they go. Someone in the crowd mentions how Harold is a king who will go down in history, which is true. Like I said before, Harold is one of the best kings I've seen in One Piece, so what the people are saying about him is very real. But while King Harold is away on his voyages, Loki and his beastly friends take revenge on Elbaf, beating the people up and destroying their houses. He says how Elbaf is the strongest country in the world, so it doesn't need weaklings like them here. Loki wants to transfer his pain and affliction to the villagers. Ajuden stands up for the villagers and invokes Harold's ideals, but Loki simply doesn't understand the concept of love and why it's so necessary, because he's had to grow up without it for all his life. He thinks of Harold as foolish for trying to play nice with the human insects. Loki beats Ajuden up, and we see Gerd help him get first aid. And seeing Hajuden's friends look to support him makes Loki even more angry, and it kinda triggers him, cause Loki doesn't understand friendships, and he justifies it by calling them a group of weaklings huddling together, and he attributes Hajuden being like this to his mom's filthy blood, showing that all of his issues really boils down to him never having that mother figure in his life. Loki continues to spread pain and destruction that he suffered, but nothing seems to fulfill the hole in his heart. He jumps off the Adam tree, trying to inflict pain onto himself, but even that doesn't kill him. "I can't even die," he cries out. Loki is numb to it all, it seems like. He can't feel love nor pain. Nothing can fill the void in his heart. In the next page, we see Loki on the ground, and in the background you see a mountain sliced up. Someone says, "Hey, what's the deal with this island? There's no welcome community." And you see animals of the underworld scream in terror like someone strong just came up. Some of the pirates find Loki crying, and they say they're definitely in Elbaf. Then we find out that these pirates are Shiki the Golden Lion and Whitebeard. Shiki mentions Loki's devilish eyes, and Whitebeard is like, "I know he's a giant, but isn't he a little too big?" He asks Loki why he's crying. And as this is happening, I'm over the moon because Whitebeard and Shiki were part of the Rock's crew. And I move my eyes across the page and I also see that Stussy's there too. Yep, this is it. These are the members of the Rock's Pirates, and for the first time in the series, we see Roxy Zebek in the flesh. We see his actual face with no silhouette like I've been complaining for so long. Oda has finally done it. But we are told that Harold spotted him at the Reverie 8 years ago, which is 56 years ago from the current timeline. But not only that, we find out that Rox has murdered a Navy HQ admiral at the Reverie, and he's vanished without a trace, which hands down has to be the greatest power scaling feat in One Piece. I mean, seriously, no one in the series has managed to kill an admiral other than Rox, as far as we know. Now, vanishing without a trace, I'm not so caught up with that as I am with him killing an admiral. Because we've seen characters like Sabo and his revolutionary crew escape the Holy Land, but taking down an admiral means he's easily one of the strongest characters ever. We've always speculated this, but now I think he's a consensus top 3-4 of all time. Naturally, this feat gives him a massive bounty, which hopefully we are shown in the next chapter. And you can understand why the world government has made such an effort to extinguish his name from history, and why God Valley was so important for them, and why he had to be taken down and his name smeared from the history books. But as you're looking at Rox closely, you see the resemblance he has to Blackbeard. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this dude really might be Blackbeard himself, or a clone of him, which is when I saw his title card. Roxy Zebek, future captain of the Rox Pirates, father of Emperor Blackbeard. Well, of course he is. Of course he's Blackbeard's daddy. That's why Oda held out so long to reveal his looks, because it would have given it away. And he's on Elbaf, and he's meeting Loki, who will now find a new goal to aspire to. Rox will serve as his role model, and being around such powerful and inspirational men will light a fire in his heart surely, and will push him towards being a sun god who will bring the world to an end. Wow, what a chapter this was. Going through Loki's transformation and ending with such a big reveal. I cannot wait to see where Oda takes us next. I have so many questions about Rox and how he was able to make it into the Reverie, how he was able to form a crew with so many heavy hitters, and what exactly is his relationship with Harold. You guys, let me know down in the comments what you thought about the chapter, and what are you guys most excited for next. Until next time, stay blessed.